Talofa lava and welcome to the Global Bus Figure Success Podcast. I'm Andrew Fa'avali, your host. Every week I'll be chatting with successful Pacific people from across the globe, unpacking their stories and more importantly, picking out insights, lessons and golden nuggets you can use to live your best life too. Welcome to another week of the Global Bus Figure Success Podcast. This week we got Bernard Tuaimau from all the way from Sydney. Bernard runs his own insurance brokerage. And does many things in the community, both within Australia and in the Pacific region. So really keen to hear his story. Bernard, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your background just to start us off?
Samoan heritage, parents from Samoa, dad's from a village called Salimor, mum from Mawhali'i. I was born in New Zealand in 1984 when we sort of moved to Australia in 1987. Just the usual story. Mum and dad wanted to leave Samoa in search for a better life. And, we landed in New Zealand. I was born, and then we sort of migrated here to Australia and really made Australia home.
Cool. So what year did you, because I know you came over early, so what year did you come over? Because you're a supporter, eh?
Yeah, so I came over in 1987, man. So I would have been about 3 years old, and I did try to go for the All Blacks early on because I was the only one in the household that sort of was born in New Zealand. But when you sort of grow up with the names like George Gregan and Michael Liner and Larkham and those types of names, it's hard to not support the Wallabies, man. So yeah, it was a great period.
87 is actually an early wave of migration from New Zealand to Australia. I had an auntie who came over around 87 or 86 as well. A lot of people came to Australia after the expo here in Queensland, which I think was 88. Yep. But that was still an early wave. My auntie ended up in Lakemba, but why did you guys come over?
Mum's older sister sort of moved over here, and Mum's older sister, like most older siblings, they're the sort of key figurehead in the family, and they moved over here in sort of I think it was about 85 to a place called Doonside, and they sort of established themselves there and basically asked Mum to come over with us, with all of us. And, we sort of lived in Doonside, man. I still remember there would have been about 20 of us living in a 4-bedroom house. It's really good memories. I was young, but, I still remember sort of playing out in the front yard and stuff. And, my siblings still talk about it this day. The house was that packed that, those houses that you could sort of sleep under. It had like a door and you could sort of go under. And so a couple of my older siblings and cousins used to sleep under the house. And it was quite funny because, they at night, they used to listen to everyone's sort of conversation in the house that was sort of happening from under the house. But, it was fun time, man. There was about, like I said, there's about 20 of us. We all sort of moved here because of my mum's older sister, and she eventually moved the rest of the siblings over from sort of Samoa and New Zealand.
Well, that's the thing, eh? Some people say, oh, overcrowding. And I was like, when I was studying, I went to Wellington and I lived in a state house in Porirua, and I was like, man, overcrowding was fun. There was always something to do, even though we were like eating mussies and butter and dipping it in tea for dinner. But man, it was just fun. So, sometimes we got this kind of deficit view on what happens, but as kids we just love it. And then I can see in New Zealand they're looking to build like multi-family homes for Pacific people because that's how we live.
No, really good times, man. The best memories. I wouldn't change it for anything. You sort of get to know everyone in the street, you get to know all your sort of cousins, and it's probably the best way to grow up, to be honest.
So what did your parents do? Because I can see, you've got I've seen your brother on LinkedIn, and I see he's doing well. I know your sister's doing well as well. I'm not sure about the rest of the family, but they've platformed, they've provided a platform for, their children's success. What did they do?
So dad, speaking to mum and dad, growing up, we had a pretty established sort of family unit in Samoa. So dad was a mechanic and panel beater by trade. And he was sort of one of the main guys there in Samoa and at the panel beater shop. And, mum said that we're comfortable enough. Obviously I wasn't born then, but mum sort of had this view that there was no real future for the kids in Samoa. Yes, they were comfortable, yes, money wasn't too much of a problem, but mum just always had this vision that the future for us was overseas. And mum, she never really worked a paying job, but she was pretty much an entrepreneur. She was a president of St. Vincent de Paul. I still remember the sales calls that we used to do with her. We used to do the Amway calls and the Nutrimetics calls, and all the different multi-level marketing stuff. We used to go on calls with her, me and my brother Joe. I remember we used to, some of the trainings that she used to go to, and we would sort of sit in the car, and Dad would go buy us a pie and a drink, and then Mum would go off to a sales training, and then we'd go from door to door, man. And that's my fond memories of Mum. Like, we were raised like a traditional Samoan family, God and church first always. Dad instilled some pretty strong values. What Dad sort of taught me growing up, taught all of us, was just the importance of doing things properly. If you got your name to it, you got to make sure that you do it properly. Dad wasn't blessed with, the orator gifts of many of my uncles and many Samoans. Dad's style of leadership was always through, sort of demonstrating and sort of actions. He would, cook the family barbecues, make sure that everything was sort of done properly. He was the sort of one that the whewhiau or the priest would always rely on. Whereas Mum, she was more, I'd say she was more a visionary. I still remember, well, I was a young father, but she always told us to dream and want better. Samoans, you sort of, you go to school, and then as soon as you're old enough to sort of, make an income, your role in the family is to contribute to fellow beloveds and contribute to those types of things. Whereas, Mum always played the long game. She made sure we could study for as long as possible. Make sure we get good jobs, and make sure our families were sort of set up before she worried too much about that stuff. So that's what pretty much Mum and Dad did, and they're the types of values that they sort of installed in us. And out of the 8-9 siblings that we have, 3 of us or 4 of us sort of own our own businesses, and are pretty comfortable in doing what we're doing. So
yeah, it's awesome to hear. I just spoke to a dude over in Houston, and he was saying the same thing. His mum and dad were really entrepreneurial, and you can just see how it filters down and cascades into their lives, just like yours. And then I just think about the Amway, and I remember auntie, I had an auntie who was doing it, and she was like, come, I want to practice it. And I was thinking, oh man, you're not going to sell anything. But actually, she didn't sell anything, but she was courageous enough to give it a go. So, you just think about them migrating and giving these things a go. Even just giving it a go is good. But then your mum went and succeeded in it and became president of one of the biggest NGOs. So then you went to school. So is Doonside Western Sydney?
Yeah, Doonside's Western Sydney. So we sort of, our first house was in Marylands, which is sort of Parramatta, and I think that's where, me becoming a Parramatta supporter started from. But then we sort of, I call home Mount Druitt. I was raised in a suburb called Bidwell. And yeah, that's probably that's where I sort of call home, where I grew up.
Cool. So you went to school there. Did you come out and study? What did you do after school?
Funny enough, man, so was fortunate enough. I was a half decent football player, rugby league player, and so I went to Bidwell Primary School, and then went to a high school called Patrician Brothers Blacktown. And I think that place sort of, really gave me some identity. It was an all boys school. It was a Catholic school, so had those sort of strong values around brotherhood and sort of identity and that sort of stuff. And played rugby league there. Thought I was going to be like many Pacific Islanders, thought I was going to be the next rugby league superstar. So man, straight out of high school, had a couple of shoulder injuries, shoulder reconstructions, and sort of couldn't pursue sort of rugby league, much further. So, my now wife, but girlfriend at the time, she sort of fell pregnant. But I sort of studied entertainment, business management, and marketing post high school, and wife was pregnant, or now wife was pregnant to our oldest, and it was a real crossroads at that time, whether I should, sort of continue to pursue studies or sort of give it up and sort of just go work and sort of support, support the family. And, I decided to do pursue the studies and, I guess the rest is sort of history. Sort of after I graduated, my first job was for a sales and marketing company. We used to do the after sales for some of the prestige European cars. And, basically, I think I was there for about 2 months, and, someone lost a large account, and I got sort of made redundant, man, seriously, just before Christmas. And basically, after that, I rang up a recruiter, and a recruiter said, here's a couple of job interviews. And I went to one called Suncorp, which is, obviously a big brand up there in Queensland. And they had a graduate program, starting off in insurance claims and sort of dabbling in a couple of different areas in insurance. And, since I was, I was sort of out of a job, and I had a couple of job offers then, but decided to take that one. Sort of, I felt like it wasn't really marketing or business, but I felt it sort of suited my skill set, and, really enjoyed that. But, my best days are probably high school. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a great school, so good that I sent my 2 sons to Patrician Brothers Blacktown. And it's sort of installed something in me, that school, around just seeing the world. You sort of go on excursions, and playing rugby league, you get to visit different parts of Australia, and you get to tour overseas and stuff. And playing rugby league and going to that school, I think sort of really opened up my eyes to what was outside Mount Druitt, sort of thing. And I credit that school for instilling some really good values that I still sort of carry with me today.
Yeah, because Patrician Brothers, that's a nursery for rugby league stars. So who are some of the people who went all the way through and made the league?
I think they've produced, if not over 100, or close to 100 sort of first graders. The recent crop of players, guys like Jerome Luai, sort of went there. Stephen Crichton sort of went there. The old boys, coming through my sort of era, were guys like Junior Jeff Lima. Tons of players, sort of Matt Moylan sort of come through there. The tons of really good footballers sort of come out of that school.
Yeah, cool. So how did you find it when you were with your aspirations for rugby league were kind of dashed through injury? Did it take a while for you to reconcile, or like there's some people who are still holding on to it, but because it's such a bottleneck, and we all know this, and probably it's just going to get worse because there's more people coming out aspiring. So how did you deal with that?
Like at the time, it was a blow sort of thing. It was, find that you're 18, 19 years of age, and your girlfriend's pregnant, and you've had a couple of injuries. So it was pretty tough, man. But look, it's what it sort of taught me was I learned, like, without knowing, but I sort of learned a lot playing football. Whether yes, I didn't go all the way through to first grade, but some of the things that you learn in terms of resilience, teamwork, persistence, hard work, sort of all those types of transferable skills that if you don't make first grade, all these types of skills you can transfer into your work career or your business career. I think there's some of the values that I sort of learned. It was a tough time, but in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. With my work career, I was able to sort of marry the both. My passion for sport, my passion for business, and being a Pacific Islander. I think I got the best of all those worlds now. Now in sort of what I do, in my sort of field. So yeah, tough times but good.
Yeah, because I just want to, like, if we paint the picture around the context, so you're 18, 19, your shoulders are busted, your girlfriend is pregnant for the first time, you're studying in at a crossroads. Man, that's probably a pressure situation for a 19-year-old. It sounds like you already had built up some resilience, because not many people would get that through that without going off the rails.
Yeah, man, like I credit, my now wife for, she carried a lot of the burden, to be honest with you. I was sort of 19 and still did what I did. And yeah, it was a tough time. I think the support network that we have, and I think that's one of the real strengths of being from the Pacific Islander family, is the support networks. The support networks that I had from mum and dad and my siblings to be able to still pursue post high school studies, and her support network with her mum and dad and her siblings to be able to assist financially and support our oldest child at that time. And man, we went on to have 6 kids, and we sort of look at things and look back at things and sort of laugh sometimes about how sort of things that we used to do to get by back in the day. But they're all sort of learning curves, and it was sort of tough then, but you sort of reflect and go, man, those sort of instilled some toughness in us that we can use today.
Yeah, congrats, man. It's massive. 6 kids and owning your own business and doing well down there, and also contributing to the community. So you came through Suncorp, and how did you end up having your own brokerage? What's that story about?
Funny story, man. Like, so I worked in claims and did a bit of underwriting at Suncorp, and in my mind, I wanted to be an underwriter long term, and I used to take phone calls from these people called insurance brokers or insurance advisors, and man, they had a lot of swagger about it, man. You can tell that they were the decision makers. You could tell that they were, they had, that they were the life of the party. And man, I'd like to think of myself as a people person. And I remember a phone call when, one of the brokers, said to me, "Have you thought about being a broker?" And I'm like, "No, not really." Goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Oh, I want to go into underwriting or eventually maybe even actuaries." And he goes to me, "Man, you got too much personality to work as an underwriter. You should be a broker." And that sort of sat with me, man. And I started applying for jobs, and man, could never get a start anywhere, because usually what happens is brokers sort of hire people that come from underwriting, because underwriters are the ones that sort of issue the terms. They sort of set out the premium. They sort of, set out the terms and conditions of a policy. So, it's a pretty cool job, underwriting. And most brokers would only hire underwriters, and I couldn't get a start. And, I managed to get a start, man, but I had to take a massive pay cut. I think I took about a 30% pay cut, and I had 4 kids then, man. So it was a massive gamble. And I think it was about 30 or 40% pay cut. And, I started right at the bottom as an insurance broker. I was what you call administration assistant. And I still remember my first day, man. I was in the kitchen making my noodles for lunch. And one of the girls there goes to me, "Man, how does it feel to do a girl's job?" And I sort of looked at her and smiled and thought, "Oh yeah, feels all right." But, for me, it was a means to an end. It was, for me, what I learned from rugby league was all about goal setting, taking stepping stones and goal setting. And that's how I sort of got into, sort of insurance broking. And man, to supplement my income, I used to play poker. My wife and I used to play poker a couple of nights a week at the local pub. You sort of turn up there on a Tuesday night and, and sort of pay your $20, and all your money goes into this pot, and everyone pays for it, and everyone used to muck around and, because have a few beers. But I used to take it serious because,
Needed it.
I needed it. So between my wife and I, we used to win 1 or 2 games a week, or we used to cash, first, second, or third place. And, some people might frown upon it and call it gambling. I don't call it gambling. There's a certain skill set you need to play poker. And, and that's what supplemented my income for about sort of 18 months. And, I sort of climbed the ladder at sort of, at the brokerage firm, and the rest is sort of history.
So can we just go to poker for a little bit? What's the skill set that's required? You said that, there's obviously a skill set. It's not just a game of chances.
Oh, it's like any game, man. It's like, you got your basic rules, but then it's all the strategies around that, around the sort of, it's calculating your odds, when to call, and, the old song, know when to fold them, sort of thing. And it's all maths, it's all, but more importantly, it's more a psychological game. It's you sort of play the player, not the cards so much. So, once you play with a certain person for long enough, you sort of know their betting habits. You sort of know how they sort of react, and in sort of different situations, and you sort of you play along with that. You know, you can't sort of sit there and wait for the best cards. You know, you sort of got to make sure that you're you know, you're sort of playing the player. You calculate sort of the maths and your chances of hitting a certain card and that, and you know, that's what's sort of cool about poker.
Almost a perfect metaphor for life, and especially what you were going through, because you know you were going down there to win some money, pretty much to get your bottom line. So like for those who don't play poker, what could you get at a pub night poker thing?
Oh, it just varies, man. On a quiet night, you know, first prize back then was probably $300 to $500. You know, on the big games, you know, which is probably a Friday night or Saturday night, you could win about $1,000. So yeah, good times, man. Good times back then. Now we don't have any time to do any of that with so many kids. So
Yeah, bro. Oh man, so you've come up. You chose to go the other route, not underwriting. You went into becoming a broker. So you obviously did your yards admin, not just admin, but admin assistant. So then what? How did you come to owning your own one?
So did some studies. You know, I needed to get my tier 1, tier 2 and diploma qualifications in insurance broking. Man, I was a real go-getter, eh? Like, you know, there was only 3 of us in the business at the time, and you know, I think my boss and our business partner at the time sort of gave me a small portfolio to manage once I got my qualifications, and I managed to double that portfolio. You know, doubled that portfolio. We sort of grew the business. Started tapping into sort of some of my networks, you know, and sort of different connections that I sort of had, you know, through sports and through the community. And then basically, I think it was 2014, you know, the business was going really, really well. You know, you know, I speak about it with my business partner now. You know, he sort of says his concern was always about me leaving. And don't get me wrong, I got a couple of job offers, you know, along the way. But for me, you know, the whole Samoan / Pacific Islander thing around loyalty and you know, and being loyal to that person that gave you your first start. And you know, I had an end goal. You know, eventually I wanted to have skin in the game. And in 2014, and my business partner was going through some things, and he said to me, "Hey, you know, do you want to buy the book of business off me?" And you know, I in my head I said, man, like in my head I was thinking, geez, man, like I wanted some skin in the game. I didn't want the whole game sort of thing. You know, I wasn't sure whether I was ready, man. And you know, I knew I was a really good insurance broker and insurance advisor. I knew I was really good at that aspect, but you know, the business aspect was really new to me. And you know, sort of saved up a deposit to sort of, you know, buy a house. And again, I took a gamble and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And, you know, 2014, you know, I brought the business in 2014, and, you know, I haven't looked back. You know, a lot of challenges during that time. You know, I sort of learned a lot, you know, in the sort of 9 to 10 years as being a business owner. You know, and that whole thing around, you know, being good at your job and having a real strong skill set and running a small business, man, it's completely different, man. It's yin and yang. And you know, you don't really go to school for that sort of stuff. You know, it's sort of you know, sort of learn on the fly, and you make a lot of mistakes, and you know, and you sort of learn from it.
How much was the book worth?
At the time, I think the book was worth, how much revenue? Wasn't that much. I think the book was probably generating about 600,000 top line, 700,000 of income. So
2014.
yeah, 2014. You know, and now to sort of look at the size we are now, man, it's you know, been a blessing, you know, God's blessing and stuff. But you know, it was a big gamble back then. You know, made a few mistakes, learned a lot. And yeah, me and my business partner now, who's my old boss, we sort of joined forces again in I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019. You know, we sort of had the opportunity to purchase another portfolio, which included you know, some staff up in Queensland. And you know, 2023 now we're about to finish with our you know, biggest year. So yeah, quite happy.
Cool, man. So can we talk into the mechanics of business? Because obviously you don't learn that at school, and this is the thing. You've had 9 years on the tools. So what's been the key to, let's talk about scale. So you went from a top line of 600K. Obviously you're doing mergers, acquisitions in and amongst it while growing your core business. You've partnered up. What's your key to scale? Like either really pointy or quite broad?
Um, there's two points or two approaches. You got your organic growth, and organic growth comes from your sort of how the business sort of grows year on year without any acquisition, right? So so basically that's through referral partners, that sort of stuff. And then basically the second approach that we had was through acquisition. So we're plotting along quite nicely. So 2014, one of the biggest learning curves I sort of had was we had a joint venture with an accountancy firm here in Sydney. And I had placed someone in that business, to sort of look after that sort of portfolio. And that joint venture was quite successful. We sort of grew that from 2014 into 2017, and the business was absolutely humming. Things were going really, really well. I have a CFO that sort of advises me on how we're sort of going with budget and that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, I had a breakup with that joint venture. I won't go into the specific details, but basically we had to sell that joint venture off, and it was quite a really tough period. We sort of had a bad breakup, but what I got out of that was, being a Pacific Islander, being in business, there's a lot of trust that's sort of placed in people. Whether it's your close circle of friends or whether it's people that you sort of bring into your circle, who you sort of think that sort of has your best interest. Being a PI, man, you sort of just trust that they're doing the right thing for you, and you sort of go along. And this is the business lesson, man. I hear it also often. And I wasn't really across a lot of the details that were sort of happening in that portfolio. And basically, I got burnt, just being that nice guy, that nice Pacific Islander guy that sort of trusts everyone. But, what you sort of realize, man, is you got to look after yourself first from that perspective, from a business perspective, to make sure that your own interest and your family's interest is put first. And then that's what I really learned. But I guess businesses business in general, I sort of bounced back from that, a couple of years down the track, sort of bounced back from that. Really took an interest to make sure that I was across the numbers, across that sort of stuff, across, the strategies of where we wanted to sort of take the business and sort of grow. 2019, when I rejoined with my business partner, that was a big milestone. I had to take some advice from some people around whether to go into business with someone or not, because going into business with someone works, a lot of the time, and it doesn't work a lot of the time. And I sort of took some advice from my brother, who's also got a business partner, and he said that the feedback and advice that he gave me around that is basically, so long as you guys got the same values, underlying values, and you sort of trust each other in that sense, things will go well. And I think that's what we really complemented each other. We had very strong values around doing the right thing for our people and our customers, doing the right thing for our staff, and doing the right thing for our families. But we had different skill sets that we brought to the table. We had different skill sets brought to the table. And, the last couple of years, it's been around acquisition. We just made a recent acquisition a couple of weeks ago, and that settles, 1st of August. And, basically, we want to create a culture in our workplace that people want to come to work to. And I think that's what's been quite successful. But, just going back to business and I guess having the skill set to actually do your job, man, it's sort of tough, man, because 1 minute you're wearing the hat of the business owner, and being a small business, you need to be across HR issues, you need to be that marketing person, you need to be the decision maker, you need to make sure that your business is profitable, which is the key. You can be increasing the top line and increasing revenue and increasing your sales, But if the profitability isn't there, then, you know, there's no real point, you know, of really doing anything. You know, you'd much rather have you know, a lower sort of sales turnover and be much more profitable than, you know, do a lot of sales and not have much profitability at all in the business. So, you know, and then, you know, next sense, you know, you have to turn around and make sure you're giving really good advice to your clients. You know, you're making sure that you're, you know, being a really, really good insurance broker. You know, so being in small business is a tough thing. But, you know, I guess my advice is if you're not strong in a particular skill set, make sure you bring someone in that is strong in that skill set. You know, I used to have the mindset in business that I had to be the smartest guy in the room. You know, like no one can be smarter than me because, you know, I'm the business owner. You know, I'm the one that everyone comes to for answers. But you know, what I sort of learned in business is that no, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You know, it is important to make sure that you bring people in the room that are smarter than you, that know what they're doing and that are very, very strong in that sort of area that you're looking for, because that's how business grows. You need to be a good leader. You know, you need to be a good motivator. You need to make sure that you are sort of setting out strategies and everyone's sort of clear in the business where you want to take the business, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know all the answers in business.
Yeah, cool. I'm interested in that because, and I'll break it down. I want to talk about acquisitions, partnerships, and obviously culture. But you know, the partnerships thing. So because you know, I sold in 2021. It didn't, you know, like you're good friends and stuff, but you know, things can go wonky, hey. And so you know, after I sold, it was, you know, it was tough for everyone, tough for him, tough for me. So I just thought, man, not going to do that again. I'm going to be sole director in everything I do because, you know, but I understand what you're saying in terms of the values and then the diversification of skill sets. Because then I'm thinking about it now about, you know, a year and a half on, I'm thinking, oh, if you really want to get to where you want to get to, um, you need other people. And then I agree, you know, I think you absolutely have to try to be the dumbest in the room but you just kind of helicopter on top and, you know, synthesize everything and bring it all to a point. The acquisitions game, which is buying other businesses, how do you acquire, you know, obviously other companies that you're buying have different cultures to you. What's the key to success for acquiring a business and then bringing everything under shared values, shared vision, and bringing the team together with the new founders or with the new buyers?
Yeah, for us, we when we're purchasing these portfolios, it's usually the previous business owner exits straight away. You know, so we sort of purchase sort of small to medium sort of portfolios that are in distress. And when I say they're in distress, you know, they're not making money, the culture's probably bad. You know, the director's looking to get out of the business. You know, he doesn't have an exit strategy or she doesn't have an exit strategy in terms of, you know, they don't have a child, a son or a relative or a daughter that's working in the business. So for us, they're the types of portfolios we like to purchase. And for us, you know, it's economy of scales, right? You sort of look at it and go, how could we streamline that business? You know, really make it really efficient, bring it in-house and basically bolt it onto our current portfolio and current businesses and have our systems in place that we could sort of move into that business and make it as efficient as possible. And then really bringing our values and our culture into that business to make sure that it's profitable from day one. You know, so for example, if looking at a portfolio that's got 3 or 4 or 5 staff that's sort of running it, we sort of look at it and go, okay, that looks a bit staff heavy. You know, if we could bring it in-house, we'd probably only need, you know, one, you know, senior person to look after that portfolio. And then we've got the systems and processes in place that will be able to really make it a really efficient business and make it worthwhile purchasing. So that's
Marcus Stonis or whatever his name is talks about that. Hey, so these turnarounds. Yeah, I heard something like you know, look for a distress. You could either look for a distressed business or a distressed owner, or even better, both. But how do you find these people? How do you find these people or businesses?
You know, in our game, like there are a lot of sort of good size. When I say good size, there are a lot of small operators that are within our network, within other networks that, that are always keen to sort of sell. From our perspective, we're sort of lucky, with our setup. We've got a lot of, small and medium-sized businesses within our sort of network. So our first point of call is always our network first, but it obviously differs from industry to industry. There's brokers and advisors that specialize in buying and selling businesses. But for us, we're lucky enough with our network. There's been a couple of portfolios we looked at and it didn't stack up, for various reasons. And whether it's a value reason, whether it's the owner wanted too much money, or the culture there wasn't quite right, so it was not distressed, it was past the stress sort of thing. So it's just identifying those types of portfolios and then just making. This is probably I've sold a portfolio that was in 2017, and then we've made 2 acquisitions since then. So it's sort of a fun game. It's a long game doing your due diligence and stuff, but once it all settles, it's good.
Yeah, what do you think about Patrick Bet-David? I know he's in the insurance game and made his many millions out of insurance. Is this strategy something you'd emulate, or is this something you do different?
Yeah, man, that's from a different scale, man. That's obviously from a much bigger scale. Insurance is one of those things. It's the multiples on insurance books is quite attractive. And it's not even around profitability. It's just around revenue. So for example, if you're turning over, $1 million to 2 million and you're not making a profit, you don't sell on the profitability, you sell it on the top line revenue. And that could go from anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. So that could go from anything from a 1 or 2 times multiple of your revenue. And even in the good days.
So it's not based on the EBITDA.
You can look at EBITDA. Use the EBITDA. That sort of varies from 7 or 9 times. But most do it on revenue, man. 1 or 2 or even 2.5 times the revenue. So it's a good game, man. It's a really good game. So look, I don't know what the end goal is. In terms of where we sort of see ourselves from 10, 15 years time. I've got kids that are started university, and you sort of look at business and you either go into business to a legacy business to pass on to your kids, or but you constantly need to think of an exit. When are you going to look at exiting the business? And I don't know what I'm going to do, to be honest. I'll probably employ some of my kids in the business. I'll let them go work somewhere else to make their mistakes at other businesses before they can come work for mum and dad.
Yeah, I think I don't think I'll exit one of my businesses because it's something that I'm really passionate about, but I'm trying to set it up for exit, because when you set it up for exit, you got the structures that are robust enough. If someone would want to buy it, they'd look at all those fundamentals. So I don't know too. Yeah. I only know that one I wouldn't, and I'm not sure what I'd do with the others, but that's cool. Can we go into your community work as well? You've started this specific business in sports people and entertainment. I think, you can correct me on that, Facebook platform. You've been hosting like dinners and stuff to bring together leaders to inspire and help the community aspire for greater things. Can you just give us a little overview of what that's about and why you started it?
Yeah. So Pacific Business Sports and Entrepreneurs, or PBSE, man. It's it's quite funny because you're sort of in business, and I don't come across many Pacific Islanders, and funnily enough, we used to do this thing called BNI, or Business Networking International, and basically it's a networking chapter. Business owners sort of meet on a certain morning and they network, they refer business to each other. And they got an awards night or awards breakfast once a year. And, I always try and look out for Islanders when I go to these things. And man, it would have been about 300 people, 300 business owners at this awards breakfast. And, I was convinced, I'm going to be the only Islander here, sort of thing. And they caught up the awards for the different sort of chapters, and I got up and went and got an award. And then half an hour later, this guy got up, Robert Skeen, he got up and went and got an award, and we're sort of going toe for toe. And I've looked at him, I thought, this guy's Maoli, Pacific Island, that's pretty cool, man. And then after the awards, we got chatting and we're just having a laugh, going, far, man. And I was convinced it was Maoli, but he worked out to be Tongan. And then he
Oh,
started,
yeah, skiing.
he started telling me about this group that he just started. I think there would have only been 80 people, in the group at the time. And he goes, "Man, I just started this group called Pacific Business Sports and Entrepreneurs. It'd be cool if you'd sort of join." And I said, "Oh, what was the whole purpose of the platform?" So I jumped in there and sort of pulled all my networks into it and stuff. And basically the reason why we started it was, man, to connect with other Pacific business owners. It gets lonely in this game. We hardly see any brown faces. And we knew there were a lot of Pacific business owners and professionals sort of out there. So we basically started that platform to sort of connect with other PIs. And to be honest, in the early years, I spent a lot of time. I've met so many cool people, man. I think I met you through that network. I literally would send someone a message and go, "Hey, man, like, be good to connect," and we'd go sit down and meet for a coffee or chat over a beer or lunch, man. And I've met so many Pacific Islanders, business owners, professionals. And that platform was the whole purpose of the platform was a couple of things. That was to connect with other like-minded PIs that were in the business or professional space, and just to inspire a lot of the young people or the others that have thought about going into business. And there was a platform just to share content, sort of ask questions, sort of engage with our very specific people across Australia, New Zealand, and across the Pacific, across the region. Then we started doing events off the back of that. We've run a couple of events like Pacific Pathways to Success was our first event in 2016, where it's basically a panel of business owners and professionals who sort of shared their stories and how some of the challenges that they had going into business or their careers. Basically we run other events. We've run a couple of sporting events, a couple of dinners. It's been a bit quiet post-COVID. I think a lot of our committee have been busy sort of scaling their own businesses and looking after their families and day-to-day life. But we'll be running a couple more events, if not this year, definitely in the next coming years. But man, it's a really cool platform, man. We've been able to connect with, a lot of successful Pacific Islanders, right? It's a bit like the platform that you've got here with the podcast, man. It's a platform for you to sort of allow Pacific Islanders to tell their stories and struggles of being in business and being in the corporate sector. So that's been pretty cool. We've run a lot of good events. We've connected with a lot of good people. Sometimes people think that's my full-time job, working for PBC, because like most PIs, you're pretty shy, man. You don't really like to talk about what you do and how you make your money, man. And so I don't really talk about what I do on there. It's just a platform that allows everyone to sort of share their stories, man. And what I found, man, there's some PIs that do some crazy out there stuff. And then you've got a lot of PIs that are sort of disconnected themselves from the PI community, because when I speak to these people, like I say to them, "Man, why aren't you doing much in the community, and why are you so disconnected from the community?" And the common feedback that I get, and the common answer that I get back is that, when I think about success and I try to mirror and mimic people who are successful and surround myself with those people aren't PIs. They're Europeans, they're Anglo-Saxons, they're Asians. So my business circle is made up of those people. And I sort of almost feel as though this is their response, that I've had to disconnect myself from the Pacific community to be successful. They've sort of whitewashed themselves to be successful, which is a sad answer to some degree. But man, a lot of these people are sort of coming back to the platform. I hit them up and say, "Hey man, do you want to buy a table at our event?" And the only time they connect themselves with being Pacific Islander is when they see a famous footballer or they see The Rock on TV and they go, yeah, I'm Samoan. But really they're as plastic as anything. But it's sad to some point, that we almost feel as though we have to disconnect ourselves from our Pacific culture to
Do you think that sometimes when you're trying for business, because the underpinnings of business are really capitalism, and then we come from a communal collective kind of place, and the underpinnings of business are individual, but it doesn't, like, the essence of it is really individual. Like, I'm going for my career, I'm going to create this top line, blah blah blah, and then how it is in community, it's like for the greater good, and so we kind of play to the average. And so fundamentally, it can sometimes compete, but it doesn't necessarily, because there's a beauty where you bring it into an intersection. Do you reckon that that could play into why they're trying to disconnect? Because yeah, I've tried to connect both. In the past couple of years, I've just kind of focused on the business side, to be honest, and less on the not profit and the community, although everything I do is in community. Could that contribute, like how our ideals kind of can clash?
Yeah, look, definitely, man. Yeah, for us, everything's communal, right? Like, as a Pacific Islander, there's this sense that nothing belongs to you. There is a sense that everything belongs to the wider community. But we live in a time and place where you can marry the two. You can be a successful business owner, and you can be a very strong Pacific Islander. I demonstrate that on a day-to-day basis here at work. I wave my Pacific culture loud and proud. There is a time, when you're coming, and racism has part of it. Assimilation has something to do with it, where you need to sort of do those types of things to make sure you are successful. But our people also tend to sort of go into the community space and that sort of field. But for me, you can have the best of both worlds. I think I'll use that example, where I sold that joint venture. For me, everything was communal. I almost treated everything, almost my business, as communal. Like, it's not mine. I'm just the caretaker. Everyone's a shareholder in this business. But what I learned, man, if I don't put myself first, I'm not in a position to help my wider community, my wider family. And I think that's the sort of approach that you have to have, is that for me to be able to help my wider community and make sure that I can share the wealth, I need to make sure that I'm financially strong and stable first. My values, are strong first, and me and myself, I look after myself first, so I could help my wider community. That's the approach I take now.
Yeah, and I think that's where the sweet spot probably lies. I've heard a podcast with Ulu Aiono back in New Zealand. He owned this massive tech company that he sold for multi-millions way back in the day. And he said, he came up and he focused on his business, and then he knew there was going to be a point he was going to have a successful exit. And now he's starting up all these really good organizations and initiatives over there for Pacific people. So I guess there's different ways to get there. It just depends on your own personal circumstances. And yeah, you got to look after yourself first. So the PBSE Facebook page, we'll put it on the show notes. And I feel like there's people like me, like I'm a little bit shy. I lurk there and I read everything, and I just throw up a like, but I don't really engage that much. And is that part of our kind of cultural shyness thing?
Oh, it definitely is, man. And like, you talk about this platform, right? Like, at first I thought this was your full-time gig, doing podcasts.
Oh yeah,
It's not until I got to know you a bit better that I realized, wow, there's a whole business, that's part of the podcast, and it's I think that's pretty common of our people. We don't like talking about ourselves. We like to listen to stories of other successful islanders. And in my game, it took a long time for me to sort of talk about what I do and how I do things, because that's not how we're raised, right? For us, call it I wouldn't call it tall poppy syndrome. It's more about it's never about us. It's always about everyone else. Culturally, that's how we're raised. So for me to talk about myself, it's pretty uncomfortable. I know it probably sounds like it's not uncomfortable, but it took a lot of practice to talk about myself, what I do, and my services, before I was comfortable enough to sort of share my journey and share my story. But no, that's just Pacific Islanders. I think, we like to, but it doesn't mean we're not good at networking and connecting. Man, we're great storytellers, man. Like, people want to, hear our stories. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just, we're just shy people generally.
Yeah. So, with like I interview Americans and that, and I remember Rob Palicki was just straight up, oh yeah, I should be valued at 5 mil, blah blah. And like we're a little bit shy to tell our numbers and stuff like that. But sometimes I feel like if we don't share our numbers, then it's just for people who are trying to come up. It's just all airy fairy. It's not really encapsulated in a tight goal and stuff like that. So then it's kind of hard for them to fathom. You know what I mean? And I feel like the Americans that I interview, they're just straight up about what they're going after. Because like I said, Max Moller from Houston, Texas, man, he's just going after it. He's in real estate, and he's just straight up with what his goals are. And I feel like there's a diasporic kind of context difference as well between the States and us down here in the South Pacific.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. Like, I think that's been raised in America. Like, I can guarantee you, the guys you've interviewed in America are just as Samoan, and they were raised just as Samoan as we were here in Australia and New Zealand. But you put that, you couple that with American culture and being loud and being strong and being confident with what it is that they want to achieve. I think that's the mixture of both, and then you've got this. You've got the snowball effect where you've got a really strong, person like Rob, who will happily tell everyone what their goal is, and it's almost like if I visualize it, I'll achieve it, sort of thing. So it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. So then you've also done work with Rugby Australia. Obviously, DFAD is putting a lot of money into things that are of lots of interest to Pacific people. A lot of it is kind of coming out of that geopolitical realm.
Yep.
But then you've done stuff at the junior ranks, and you've done stuff on the grassroots, and then also looking to do stuff strategically with Rugby Australia and New South Wales Rugby. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's we're in an interesting time, like you said. The geopolitical sort of landscape at the moment in Australia is pretty, and the regions, pretty crazy at the moment. It's I currently sit on the Sydney Juniors Rugby Union board and just do some work with New South Wales Juniors. For me, my underlying thing is providing opportunities for our Pacific people, whether that be in sport, business, the corporate life, entrepreneurship. I'm really big about, really, really big on that, providing our kids opportunity. And I'm not a youth worker. I don't have a youth worker background, but I think, the more opportunities that we can provide our kids, the better it is going to be for our kids. And, the more we see sort of PIs in various spaces, be it art, be it business, be it music, or sports, or acting, if our young generation see more of our PIs in that sort of space, the more they can aspire to sort of achieve those types of goals. And man, funny story, man, like the reason why I got involved in rugby politics was basically, or committees or boards, man. My kids have lived a pretty, especially the younger kids, they've lived a pretty sheltered life, and they played rugby league. And my son's first game of rugby union, he was, there was some racial abuse, on the field, and we submitted the complaint through our rugby club, and that went to Sydney Juniors, and it just felt like at the time nothing was really done about it, and that really annoyed me, man. And me being me, I thought, I can sort of fix this sort of stuff, and I got involved in our local committee, and then I got involved in our district, and eventually moved up and sitting on the Sydney Juniors board. And there's a real opportunity there for rugby union to really connect with the Pacific diaspora communities and Western Sydney. You just look at the numbers, man. Like, you look at the numbers in the NRL, I think the numbers at the moment unofficially sit around 60 to 70%. I think even a couple of years ago, it was only 49% of players that make up Pacific, that are from Pacific heritage. And rugby is just up there as well. But there's this real, belief that rugby is an elitist sport. And my role at Sydney Juniors is to grow Western Sydney, grow participation numbers, grow rugby. And I feel as though, and I know there's a real massive opportunity in Western Sydney and with our Pacific communities, for rugby to really grow. You think about it, in the Pacific, in the region, the rugby is the number one sport. But what seems to happen is like once we come to Australia, I can't comment on New Zealand because I know it's a very sort of different a game over there. But when they come to Australia, a lot of our kids pursue rugby league careers, and I feel as though it's because there's a lot more opportunities in rugby league. The perception is that rugby league is a lot more welcoming to our PIs. Rugby league is a working man's game. Whereas rugby union, there's still a lot of elitist sort of connotations that are sort of attached to the game. And I guess my role is to try and connect, grassroots rugby to, Sydney Juniors, to the Waratahs, to Rugby Australia, and show them, hey, there's a real opportunity to sort of invest. And whether that's Western Sydney or whether that's, Ipswich or Logan, where our strong, our large Pacific Island community sort of live, regardless of where it is, there is a real disconnection between Pacific communities and Rugby Australia. And I think the sooner Rugby Australia sort of, pour some resources into that, as soon as Australia sort of realizes, hey, man, there's a lot of talented kids out there. And I'm not talking about, private schools coming and just picking a couple of kids to play in their rugby teams. Yes, that's great. That's great sort of short-term sort of opportunities for our kids. But I'm talking about more a strategic approach where, there is some investment in our Pacific communities, because, I'm a true believer that, we got enough talent to sort of produce players for both rugby league and rugby union at the top level. There's enough talent there.
It's a little bit confusing because the results haven't been that good for the Wallabies over the past period. But then there's a nursery right there in Western Sydney, and then they closed down the Emus, and then for a long time there, the Two Blues and Parramatta were going wooden spoon for a long time. But the catchment is massive, and Liga seemed to be doing the right things, with the opposite happening with the the Panthers. And then the Eels were in the final last year. It just shows, the kind of chalk and cheese that's happening. But hopefully rugby get it, because the Pacific do need it. But also, this is the narrative too. The Pacific need it, but also Australian rugby needs it. And in the geopolitical space, right? The narrative can also be said, oh yeah, the Pacific need these jobs, and it's for them. But we need to get our meat to the market, and we need our old people to be cared for. And there's a demand here in Australia too, so that kind of balances the power structure. And when that narrative kind of balances, I think a lot will just follow in. But they've got to let go of that narrative where we're doing you a favor. It's actually a reciprocal kind of beneficial partnership and relationship.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. And whether we're talking about Rugby Australia or sport, or we're talking about DFAT or MFAT or the region in general, in the past, there's always this view that, the only strategic reason why there was aid given to the Pacific is because a defense aspect, where we sort of lie, in the region. The Pacific Islands, is more a defense sort of mechanism if we were ever to get invaded, or if we were ever to go to war. But that seems to have shifted, and obviously that's some pressure from other regions like sort of Asia sort of coming to the Pacific. I think, there's this real belief now that it needs to be a sort of consultative sort of approach and discussion. And I think one thing is, I think they're starting to realize the importance of that diaspora play and the whole in the whole discussion as stakeholders. Because
I said the D word.
Yeah, because basically, we are the in-betweeners, right? We have strong Samoan, Tongan, Fijian ties or Pacific ties to our heritage, yet we were sort of schooled here, raised here, understand the political sort of game and that it sort of plays. And I think in the past, government always neglected, the Pacific. It was always here's some aid money, go off and do what you need to do. But now it's a lot more sort of consolidative sort of approach. But more importantly, man, like bringing the diaspora, bringing all parties to the table and go, hey, what is it that the region sort of needs? What sort of projects that does the region sort of need to succeed? I think that's the sort of important thing, and it's a really good space to sort of be in at the moment, being a Pacific Islander. In saying that, man, we shouldn't be relying on sort of handouts from DFAT. And I think like anything, and I think like anything, and Australia is quite in quite a good position where Pacific Islanders only make up less than 1 or 2% of the population, so we don't have access to a lot of the fundings. We don't have a Pacific minister that we could sort of call upon. So all the projects that we needs to be commercially viable first. So when you look at our projects, whether it be some programming or whatever it is that you want to do, and you look at the different revenue buckets, first and foremost, you want to make sure that it could be commercially sustainable without any injection from DFAT.
Wow, said like a true entrepreneur who is passionate about seeing community rise while knowing that sustainability and longevity for community projects really lies in the ability to sustain themselves beyond funding and aid from others. That's the show this week. It's been great to have Bernard on, a man who works with his head, heart and hands, and who runs on the board to prove that it can all be done together. If you aren't already, jump onto the PBSE Facebook page, Pacific Business, Sport and Entrepreneurs, and connect with Bernard on LinkedIn. He loves the network, so we'll have all of his links on our show notes. Thanks, Bernard, and keep up the great work. Raising a family of 6 with your wife, supporting and helping others, and managing and scaling a successful business is really testament to the vision, the passion, and the fact that you're a go-getter, and where you see a problem, you'll jump in and fix it, just as he did when his son experienced racial abuse at his rugby game. Okay, that's us for this week. Next week, we head back to the USA, where we hear from Max Moala, a Tongan entrepreneur who is investing, hustling, and ensuring he leaves a legacy behind for his family. Join us then. Take care, and God bless.